that interact with each other and with their physical chemical environment. So ecosystem is all the living a self-contained community of living organisms which they are interacting with the physical environment as well as chemical factors. So what about habitat in an ecosystem where that microorganism is surviving? That is called as habitat. And a particular habitat sometimes indicates there's the importance of that particular microorganism. See here, Arctic Canada. This Arctic Canada, Arctic is a habitat, the area, and even habitat also may tell you the whatever the major organism is there in that particular area. Habitat might describe the type of place where the creature lives also. Uh, the limitations of this biodiversity, the definition, there's a in actually a group of morphologically similar creatures. There is a species definition will give a group of morphologically similar creatures which can freely interbreed to produce sterile offsprings. That is called as species. But what happened? Sometimes interbreeding takes place, but fertile offsprings are not produced, and these are reproductive isolates. So among the species, only the reproduction takes place, but there are some limitations. Problems with the definitions are there, and it does not explain about the extensive. There is extincted creatures, and creatures who breed asexually. Bacteria does not explain. Creatures who cannot be tested ethically, man versus chimps, also cannot be explained. And the relatedness among the living organisms can be measured. That is, a phylogeny can be measured by similarity of DNA, similarity of proteins, and similarity in biochemistry, biochemical activities, enzymes activities, similarity in embryology. Most preferable is the DNA. Generally, in our microorganisms, also the similarity is measured by using the 16S RNA comparison. There is a 16S RNA similarity will be checking. More the similar, it is the more related. And in case of eukaryotic organisms, there is a interrupted sequences. IET sequences are compared along with the 18S RNA sequences. See, this is a DNA profiling sequence, and this is how they are connected with one another. So biodiversity is having intrinsic value, means the value which is there within it. So extrinsic values are, and it is having the utilitarian value, or it is giving a lot of goods. Fruits are there, timbers is coming, and it is a ecotourism. It is encouraging, and it forms national parks. And what it is giving, what are the benefits of biodiversity? Consumptive value it is giving. There is a food and drinks we are getting, fuels we are getting from the biodiversity, medicines we are getting, and better crop varieties. See, most of the crop varieties that are there now, that are being cultivated, they are the outcome or modified crops of the forest. There is a biodiversity, and we are getting a lot of industrial material, starting from the pulp for the paper production. Lot of materials are being produced from the biodiversity. Non-consumptive value like recreation values they are giving, and biodiversity is educational and research. It is valuable. See, a lot of botany or zoology or whatever the life sciences are concerned, and even physics are there. We can understand a lot from the nature. So biodiversity in that context, it is helping us. And traditional values also being conserved by using the biodiversity. And these are the different, actually this is a review that I am doing. Ecological services it is providing. Now we'll come to the threats to the biodiversity. what are the dangers actually there for the biodiversity? What are the different threats are available for the biodiversity? One is habitat destruction. Habitat is the area where that particular organism survives in that ecosystem. Uh, where that, see, if you take the example of sparrow, where does it stay? Somebody, Pavan,
In the nest, sir. In the nest.
where see where its nest is located? It is on the banks
On
of
the
the
tree.
paddy crops.
Banks of the.
On the
Yes.
banks. See, there are some trees over nearby the paddy trees. There it will construct it nest, and there it will sustain. That is its habitat. Uh, and so what is happening here? Because of now there are no more banks. Earlier we used to leave a lot of space around the paddy fields, but now because of over exploitation of lands, there are no trees have been cut. So as the trees are not available,
Green is
and
not green.
as the trees have been cut, there is no habitat available for the there's sparrows. That's what as the habitat has been destructed, that is the problem that they are not surviving. And one more thing, see, there are multiple reasons for sparrow, like grains. Earlier we used to grow the larger size grains, but now only we are preferring the fine grains, only Sannabiyam. But earlier we used to grow the larger, like only Hamsa, Surekha, such kind of varieties used to be there. But now it is not kind of that kind of thing. And earlier after cutting the paddy, we used to leave it in the field for some time. But now the harvesters have come, and within a single shot, so the grains are not available for the birds. So that is the one problem. Habitat destruction is one of the major problem for the threat of biodiversity. And second, global climate change. Global climate change, there are many things. Change in biotic elements of ecosystem leading to biotic change. There are several factors that are, see, just now I told you, there's a habitat destruction. Why the habitat is being destructed? Because we want to increase the land for agriculture. And earlier we used to use a lot of organic manure and for biocomposting, but now chemical fertilizers, because of green evolution, people started using of these chemical fertilizers. So that is leading to the change of the climate. And there is, because of radiation also, there is different types of radiation, mobile phone, electricity, and other things. Lot of radiation is changing our climate. A lot of pollution is also responsible for climate change. Because of last year's lockdown, lot of the climate has been improved, and which has yielded good amount of rain last year. You must have seen that one. And so this change in climate is also global. Because of global warming, carbon dioxide is one of the responsible. Methane, carbon dioxides are responsible for global warming. And this glaciers, there's icebergs are being melted. And because of this melting, what happened, that terrestrial area is being reduced, and aquatic area is being increased. And it is believed, like after few years, land is going to be decreased a lot. Okay. Second, habitat fragmentation. Earlier, if you see your grandparents or great grandparents, they used to have the lands in 10 acres, 20 acres, 30 acres, isn't it? Now it is already bigas, because the land has been fragmented, divided into several fragments. Because here, earlier we used to have a big agricultural
Excuse me,
lands.
sir, your screen is not shared.
It's not shared. Huh? It is shade, man. Is it visible now?
No, sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we are discussing about threats to the biodiversity. One is habitat destruction. It's an area of there's a living is being destructed, and second is global climate change. The climate there are a number of reasons for it. One is industrialization, second is pollution, and modernization. These are the different reasons that is the ecosystem is there's a climate is being changed. And one of the biggest threat what we believe is global warming. And global warming increase in temperature, the atmospheric temperature is causing the dissolving of big glaciers. There is icebergs, and this is leading into decreased there is a terrestrial area when you compare with the aquatic area. So aquatic area is increased, and even though this increased aquatic area, and it does not mean that aquatic organisms are benefited. Here because of pollution, even aquatic area is damaged. Next, habitat fragmentation. Habitat is the area of surviving, that's the area where the living organisms survive. Earlier we used to have very big lands. There is a farmers used to have almost 10-20 acres of land for each person. Now the lands are divided. See, if a jamindar is having about 10 sons, and the 10 acres are divided into one each. And again, if these sons again they are having two sons each again, then again 1 acre is divided into half acres. Now if the villagers are there, you can understand, you will be knowing that now the lands are fragmented into small pieces, not very big pieces. See, suppose if you are growing any like jawar, you are growing in jawar. Suppose if you are growing in 10 acres of jawar, then what happens? Even though birds comes and eats over there, the damage is going to be marginal. But if you are growing the jawar in half acre or 1 acre, then just imagine that the neighbors are growing something else and this fellow is growing only the jawar, then the damage is going to be very high. And see that for biodiversity, this is living organisms, as the grains are not available, they may not survive over there for a longer while. So habitat fragmentation, there is a small habitats is also one of the responsible for biodiversity threat. And pollution, there is a major problem of biodiversity threat is the pollution. What can be called as pollution? Anything if you are disturbing the natural components. See, the carbon dioxide should be there 0.03% in atmosphere. It does not mean that if you are removing that carbon dioxide, that is also a pollution. If what oxygen is 21%, if you are, see, there are certain anaerobic microorganisms. If you are increasing this oxygen concentration, that is also causes problem. And if you are adding lot of nutrients to pond ecosystem or water bodies, that is also a pollution. So any that is addition of nutrients, nitrates or nitrate fertilizers or something. Even see, sometimes it may be useful, sometimes it may be harmful. So whatever may be, any abnormal change in the environment is called as pollution. This pollution leads to damage to the biodiversity. See, there is a good there is a pond, and in normal pond you will be maintaining lot of there's a what do you call fishes, and some other animals are also going to be there. If you are adding a lot of nutrients to it, if you are adding lot of nutrients, sulfate nutrients or nitrate nutrients are you are adding to it, then what happens here? Nitrates are harmful for the fishes. So what happens here? The fish population gets reduced, so the biodiversity is under threat. Second, next, over exploitation. See, because of greediness of man, we started working on there is over exploitations. if something is useful in a particular area in a forest, suppose one particular plant was found to have some application, then everybody will go behind it only. They will try to take it out, and they want to explore it. That is the major problem of biodiversity threat, to the biodiversity. So this should not be there. There is a word called as uh, sustainability. There is a word called as sustainability. What does it mean, sustainability? You can explore the things, but by the same time it should be available for your future generations. So if you want to harvest, if you want to take out something from the forest, take out, but make sure that the same is available for the next generation. You do the plantation also, and when you pick a plant from the forest, simultaneously you should plant few plants for the next generation. This is called as sustainability. There should be a sustainability to maintain the biodiversity. But here, over exploitation, there's a sandalwood, and not only the sandalwood, which is a commercial value. Any like see, that is the forest one. We feel that is coming free, and our people are ready to take the phenol also if it is coming free. So even though it is a required or not, even though it is a required or not, they will try to explore it as much as possible by thinking they think that maybe tomorrow it may be available or not. That is the problem. That is a one of threat for the biodiversity. Next, alien species. Introduction of new species, that is a foreign species or new species, or a species from different areas to our area is called as alien species. Many examples are there. There is a Sarkarthoma, Prosopis juliflora. It was not a native of India. It is a native of Britain. So British people, they got this variety, and they actually, it was used as a mesh around your homes. And see, normally this Prosopis juliflora, it grows any dam conditions. Like, it does not require much water, it does not require fertilizers, it does not require protection from the grazing animals, because it got spines on it. So these kind of animals, see, once these kind of crops are growing, these kind of plants are growing, the normal plants are affected over there. And another one, the best example is Eichhornia gurrapudekka, which grows in the water ponds. It grows very extensively. This Eichhornia grows very fast, and it does not allow the growth of other normal plants. And second, disease. Disease in a particular area. See, because of corona, lot of human population is being reduced. So the biodiversity is compromised. So generally, if there is a disease, if you are growing prawns in a pond, if there is a disease, then the biodiversity is seriously affected. Right? That population density gets reduced, so that overall yield is going to be decreased. So here there are few examples that we can see. Habitat loss is a one case. There are many animals which are being extincted because of the habitat loss. Sparrow is also one of the example. This is a game bird which used to make the tunnels in the twigs, and there it used to survive. But here it is broken into fragments, so it is not able to survive. And that is habitat loss. Reasons of habitat loss: many: agriculture, farming, harvesting natural resources for personal use, for industrial and urbanization development. So we are compromising with habitat. So now habitat destruction is currently ranked as primary number one cause of species extinction worldwide. This is considered to be the number one. Okay. And poaching is hunting the animal illegally without permission. See, for the animal tusks, there's a elephant tusks and tiger teeth, claws. And nowadays people are harvesting that, killing that, illegally killing that animals, and which is called as poaching. And even red sandalwood. I think Andhra, very frequent we come across this news. There's a red sandalwood was caught by smugglers or such kind of thing. You know, in Usmania University is also we were having some trees of red sandalwood, and somebody has smuggled or illegally taken away that plant also. There is a problem. And I don't know how many of you are aware. We got at Nizam College, we got sandalwood. I think two sandalwood trees are there in the botany department, just adjacent to the botany department. And poaching, as I told you, it is not for the only animals. It is as well as plants. There is a galax, black coach, ginseng. Ginseng is a, you must be aware about ginseng. Ginseng is a energy boosting substance. It is a energy boosting substance. A lot of feed supplements got ginseng in them. So, if you summarize, threats to biodiversity is natural causes, narrow geographical area, low population, low breeding rate, natural disasters. These are the natural things which causes the biodiversity damage to the biodiversity, like narrow geographical area. If it is surviving only in the estuary, it gets killed. Even though it goes to the marine water, it will kill even though it is going into the fresh water. So that is called as narrow geographical area. Low population. If see the lion numbers or tiger numbers is less itself by itself. So if anything further damage that it is dying, that will lead into the threat to biodiversity, its biodiversity. Low breeding rate, like elephants got very low breeding rate. So if any disease, infertility or any problems are there, that will affect it to its biodiversity. Natural disasters. See, these dinosaurs were extincted because of the natural disasters. Sometime they were ruling this earth because of natural biodiversity. These natural disasters, they got extincted. Even though they are very big, they are ruling, but they got extincted because of the natural disasters. These are the natural reasons. And anthropological means human made habitat modification. There is a loss or change or over exploitation of selected species, innovation of exotic species, pollution, hunting, global. Already we discussed about this. Global warming, climate change, agriculture, and domino effect. Domino, like few species will be growing more, and remaining species will not be growing. We'll be removing them as a weed. This is called as domino effect. So what we should do then? So these are the threats we have, natural threats for the biodiversity, and we discussed about the anthropological or human-made threats also. So what we should do? What are the solutions for preventing the this loss of biodiversity? First, protecting the remaining there's an intact section of natural habitat. See, I told you the first and most important reason for the loss of biodiversity is loss of habitat. So you should try that whatever the remaining habitat is there, that should remain as such. Now I think there are big environment interest people or biodiversity interested people. They have started even for the sparrow in cities also. See, the trees are being planted over there, and we are giving the grains outside, and water pots are kept. Because of these initiatives, the number of sparrows are still some extent they are there, and they are growing. So first and most important thing is habitat restoring. At least if you cannot restore, see, already land has been divided into one. Jamindar's land has been divided into many pilla jamindars, isn't it? So that we cannot revert it back. But whatever the things are there now available, let's protect them. reduce the human population and expansion of urbanization and industries. This is the second most reason that we can. Human population, see, if the population is reduced, overexploitation is not there. If the overexploitation is not there, then the habitat is conserved. So reduce human population and expansion of urbanization and industrial areas, and educating the public about the importance of natural habitat and biodiversity. This is going to be very, very important, but a very difficult task. You should educate the people why we should conserve the biodiversity. What are the benefits that we are getting? What are the benefits? There is a recreation benefit, oxygen we are getting. Now see, we are purchasing in Delhi, one cylinder of oxygen is costing now, because of COVID situation, it is costing around 20,000 to 80,000 rupees. You know, single tree gives you that much oxygen in a single day. Such a beauty of trees. So you should educate the people. Now, because of the corona situation, the papers are covering, these are the plants which will give more oxygen, and these are the plants which you can generate in-house oxygen, indoor oxygen also. This must be educated. Solution to habitat loss can include there's a planting tree should be there, planting home gardens so as to reduce need of man to need, and there's large lands for agriculture farm. Now see, that's hydroponics and terrace cultivation. These all the things are taking edge nowadays. Because of this, you know, people are many techies, IT people, they are interested in agriculture, and they are doing the modern technologies with less land usage. If you can do the such kind of thing, less land usage, so the habitat of this biodiversity cannot be lost. Ecosystems cannot be lost. If the ecosystems are not lost, the species are not lost. If the species are not lost, then the genetical biodiversity is also not lost. You can see this human disturbance map. The red and yellow zones are, green zone is a safe zone. That is a predominantly natural green zones. Only in the Antarctica region, only where the glaciers are there only it is protected. And yellow zones are partially disturbed, means only some extent the habitat has been disturbed. And red zones is completely disturbed. If you see the India, more of red compared to the yellow. There is no green in India. So we are doing overexploitation of biodiversity. So it is a big, by 2100, only 10% of the biodiversity is going to be extincted. It is 10. By 2010 by 2100, 10% of the biodiversity is going to be extincted. See, 10% is a huge number. It is a very huge number, and those many organisms are going to be extincted if you don't take the precautions. Habitat fragmentation, you can see the example earlier. If you see from the aerial view, we used to have a big crafts, but now this is a situation. Small areas are being cultivated, and see, it leads into several problems. Deforestation is one example, and in 1981 to 1990, like 0.9% per year used to be that like a deforestation, and in 1988, 10% of the Amazon area were cut. Anyhow, you know that deforestation is continuing. See, this is the forest aerial area, and this is the aerial area. See, this is how dense is the forest here, and here you can see how the forests have been deforested. And see, why the people are doing the deforestation? There are several reasons. You know, tribals actually depends on the forest. In fact, they will worship the trees, and they will collect whatever the fruits, and grains that comes from the forest. But our people, they started see the wood. This kind of photos you might have seen in the newspaper very frequent. And there's red sandalwood logs were collected by so and so police under so and so forest. This is very common. Why these people are doing that? Because of the greediness. It is having a lot of medicinal value. They are smuggling these products to China or some XYZ area. So because of this greediness, this whatever the commercial values are, crops are there, they are being explored, and as the one species is reduced, and it affects on the population of other species as well. So overconsumption in industrial countries, and foreign debate, poverty, unequal ownership of land, and overpopulation, these are the few reasons for the deforestation. And there are some edge communities, means they are very little in number. So whenever the deforestation takes place, they are the first affected. And so we need to address this problem. They are being, see, for commercial exploitation. If you are using, if a tribal person, if he is collecting the tamarind, if he is collecting chinta, if he is collecting from the forest, and if he is using for his purpose, then it will be very little, and that will be there for a all the people who are there in that forest. But if it is commercially exploited, if that farmers, if they are collecting and they are selling into the market for a commercial benefit, if a financial benefit, then definitely the species, the biodiversity is affected. Definitely the biodiversity affected. So generally in a biodiversity, there is an area called as core area, which is generally not disturbed, and surrounding it, there is a called as buffer. So generally the biodiversity, there will be a core zone, buffer zone, and edge zone. 3 zones are there. Generally, whenever there is a damage, whenever there is a disturbance to the biodiversity, it is the edge organisms which gets affected first. Then buffer zones, then the core zones. If the core zone is affected, the complete biodiversity is lost in that particular area. Generally, it does not happen. And generally, the edge organisms are very. So we should make sure that the edge are not disturbed, so that buffer and core zone are not disturbed. And the recent issues are concerned about 75% of the genetic diversity of crop plants has been lost in the past century. See, there is a crop research center in Manila, and there's a rice research center. Rice research center is located in Manila, and that is, we have see all Indian varieties. Without, I will tell you the legal aspects. Almost all genetical varieties were lost, and they are being produced over there. Okay, so this is illegal actually. Taking our genetical biodiversity to somewhere else is illegal, and some scientists believe that like 3 species extinct forever, and it is going to extinct to 20,000 species each year. This is a very big and huge number. Roughly 1/3 of the world's coral reef system have been destroyed or highly degraded. and coral reef is one of the greatest biodiversity actually. About 24% of the mammals and 12% of the bird species are currently considered to be the globally threatened, and more than 50% of the world's wetland have been drained, and populations of inland water and wetland species have been declined by 50% from 1970 to 1999. So, conservation of biodiversity. How to conserve the biodiversity? Huh? How we should do the biodiversity conservation? Basically, biodiversity inventories. People should have an interest to conservation. Basically, two methods are there: in situ conservation, ex situ conservation. In situ seed banks, gene bank, pollen bank, DNA bank, gene bank. See, these are gene bank will be collecting the. I told you, Manila, the Rice Research Center in Manila, they have collected the seeds of rice from different areas, like from India also, and they have preserved over there. Gene bank, DNA is collected and that is preserved. Pollen bank, DNA bank, such kind of things. So biodiversity conservation is concerned in situ and ex situ. In situ is the conserving within that area, wherever the biodiversity is there, there itself we should preserve. In situ. Ex situ will be collecting the biodiversity at one particular area and will be preserving all those things which we have collected. That is called as ex situ. Just remember, in situ is a method of conserving the biodiversity in the area where it is rich. The richness, wherever the rich biodiversity is there, suppose in one particular area, huge number of lions are there, you preserve there itself. That is called as in situ. There are different modes of in situ conservation. Sacred groves and lakes are very good of biodiversity, and sacred groves also, like Guhalu. We got lot of flora and fauna inside because of uniqueness of temperature, moisture over there. And biodiversity resource. See, there are certain areas which are rich in biodiversity in that area. So that particular area is considered as a reserved area. So you are not supposed to hunt over there. You are not supposed to do a poaching over there. Hunt is a permitted one, whereas poaching is an illegal one. Either none of these things are you are permitted to do this one. So this biosphere resource, wherever that particular area it is rich in biodiversity, that area is reserved as a biosphere reserves. So illegal activities or any activities that destroys the biodiversity should not take place over there. Here these reserves are terrestrial reserves and marines. Terrestrial, like we are having on land, some reserves are there. Khajipet, this Khajiranga reserve, bio reserve is there. Many are, even here we got one reserve after Medak. In Medak is also there is a one reserve where they will be doing the breeding of this antelopes, jinka. Okay, so this terrestrial bioreserves are the areas where there is a population number is more, so that what happens here, it is breeded over there and growing over there, so its number surpasses. And marine bioreserves, like green, there's a marine areas where the particular area is particular biodiversity is more. You can take best the coral reefs. Coral reefs is the best example for this one. In this coral reefs, there's a coral reef. Actually, the coral reefs are nothing but a cylindrate skeleton structure. So there is a huge biodiversity in that particular marine area. So these are the biosphere resource. Next, national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. National parks like Nehru Zoological Park is there, and sanctuaries. See, actually, the difference in between the parks and sanctuaries. Parks, in a limited zone, the birds, animals are kept over there. Like tiger is kept in the tiger the tiger is kept in a cage and it is kept for the display. Whereas in sanctuaries, wildlife sanctuaries, and there is a tiger over there, but not in a limited to the cage, but there is a wide area for it. There is a wide area, so it can freely move. It can freely move within that area, and still its biodiversity is maintained. Still its biodiversity is maintained. That is, so these are three methods of in situ conservation: sacred groves, the reserve parks, sorry, biosphere reserve things, and third is national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. Next, ex-situ method. Here, the environment is not suitable. Environment is not suitable for the conservation of biodiversity. So what we'll do, we'll pick it from the environment and we'll conserve it some other place. This is called as ex-situ. Example, sacred plant home gardens, like some sacred plants are there, or some animals which are going to be extincted. We'll be taking it and we'll be providing a favorable conditions to it, and there we'll be maintaining it for longer time. Seed bank, gene bank, and cryopreservation. See, if something like we are collecting the seeds from different areas, and we are keeping it one place as a bank is collection basically. So seeds, if you are collecting, it is called a seed bank. If you are collecting the gene, it is called as germplasm. It is called as gene bank. And cryopreservation, sometimes tissues and even the sperms, ovum, they are preserved at very low temperature. It is called as cryopreservation. And botanical gardens, zoological gardens, and aquaria. See, if you go to the some like even botanical gardens, some plants of indigenous will be there, but we come across some foreign plants also there. Some the plants which are not of that particular area. Some desert plants are also there. Some aquatic plants are also there. Some normal terrestrial plants are also there. So here it is a ex situ preservation conservation method. We are getting something from outside and keeping here. So it is called as ex situ method. And biodiversity in India, if you take into consideration, mammals are around 386 species, and which contributes 59%. And out of which species threatened in India is 41%. See how much threatening is there. Out of only, it is 9 plus 9, 18% mammals are safe. And birds, we got 1219 species, and reptiles 495 species, out of which 46% are threatened to be endangered. Amphibians, we got 207, out of which 57% are under threat category. And freshwater fishes, we got 700, out of which 770% are endangered to be under threat. And distribution of biodiversity is concerned, flora and fauna, and it depends on the climate, altitude, soils, presence and others. Presence of other species also plays important role. And if you see, most of the biodiversity is localized in the tropical area, equatorium. On the equator region, most of the biodiversity is located. And here, the areas which are rich of biodiversity and which consist of most of the species is called as hotspots. The areas in which India got two hotspots. India got two hotspots, that is East Himalayan region and Western Ghats. Western Ghats from Mumbai to which comes base. In fact, not Mumbai. It starts from Goa. Okay, and there's a north. We have Eastern Himalaya regions. So these are the two hotspots. Are nothing but the areas which got more and more number of biodiversity in that area. So 10 biography regions of India are there. So the Trans-Himalayan region and Himalayan region and Indian desert and a semi-arid zone, Western Ghats. This is Western Ghat actually, which is rich in biodiversity. And Deccan Plateau, the biggest biographical region in India is Deccan Plateau, where we represent. This is the area. Here it comes even some part of Rajasthan, not Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Assam, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala. These all areas are covered under the Deccan Peninsula. And Gangetic Plain, which is there in the north, there is Chandigarh, Delhi, there's Haryana, and certain part of UP and Bihar. Northeast region, islands and coasts. These are the 10 regions that we got. And as I told you, even last class we discussed about it. India got 2 hotspots. What is the hotspot? Basically, hotspot is the area where huge number of richness of biodiversity is there. They are Western Ghats and Eastern Himalayas. Total 25 hotspots are there. Out of 25 hotspots, India got 2. Okay, and see, Western Ghats, they are from Western Ghats. It extends to Sri Lanka. And I told you, I'll show you in the this is see, here you got Mumbai, and here you have Goa. It extends continuously to Kanyakumari, and then it is there in the Sri Lanka also. Next is Indo-Burma region that is converting the Eastern Himalaya. There's Indo-Burma. Burma is just adjacent to the India. So this area is Indo-Burma or Eastern Ghats. And they are included among the top 8 most important hotspots. There are 25 hotspots, and if you take top 8, these 2 are included. So we got a lot of biodiversity. And there are the areas with higher concentrations of endemic species and which usually experience rapid rate of habitat modifications and loss. This is it's Western Ghat, I told you. Western Ghat faced with a tremendous population pressure. The forests of Western Ghats and Sri Lanka have been dramatically impacted by demands of agriculture and timber. That is the problem with us. The region is home to rich endemic assemblage of plants, reptiles, and amphibians, as well as elephants, tigers, and endangered line-tailed muskie. Eastern Himalayas or Eastern Ghats, and it is a home world to highest mountains. Mount Everest is also present in this one, and abrupt rise of mountains results in diversity of ecosystem that from alluvial grasslands to the subtropical brand. See, because of the forest raising over there, many mountains are there in that one. It is different to your regular grassland ecosystem. It is home to the variety of large birds, mammals, including tiger is also there, elephants, rhinos, and wild water buffaloes are also there in that particular area. So biodiversity is our life. If the biodiversity got lost at this rate, then the near future, the survival of human being will be threatened. So it is our moral duty to conserve the biodiversity as well as our environment. And long-term maintenance of species and their management requires cooperative efforts across the entire landscapes. Biodiversity should be dealt with the scale of habitats or ecosystem rather than a special level. So this is about what is the biodiversity and how it should be conserved. And next we'll do the ethical and legal terms of biodiversity. So I'll give you a 5 minutes break, and then we'll continue with the legal terms, legal aspects. So you can take 5 minutes sharp, just break, and come back. Don't leave the meet. Just after 5 minutes, we'll start the second session. Yeah, welcome back. Huh. Are you able to see the slide?
Yes,
Hello?
sir.
Are you able to see the slide?
Yes, sir.
Somebody respond.
Yes, sir.
ఏం సౌండ్ వినపట్లేదురా? హలో,
Yes, sir.
వినపడుతుంది కదా? ఓకే. సో అనదర్
Yes,
ఆస్పెక్ట్
sir.
ఆఫ్ biodiversity. Okay, thank you. Biodiversity. Ethical aspects. What do you mean by ethical aspect or moral aspect? We have seen the usages of biodiversity. It gives a lot of value. It got a lot of value. So it is our responsibility. It is our ethics to conserve it, isn't it? It is our moral responsibility. When you are getting tamarind from the forest, so we should grow the tamarind trees. When we are getting the mangoes from the forest, we should grow them. See, we should not become greedy. That we should see, when there is a bangaru batu good, no, good, you must have be aware. See, when it is laying the golden egg, you should try to harvest it for life period. It does not mean that by cutting it, we should not be over greedy, that you should not cut it so that uh, it is not available for you and for other peoples also. So it is the ethical thing that you should make it sustainable. So you should be in a position to use the biodiversity, and you should make that it is available for the rest of the people also. You should the other people also should be in a position to use it. So that is about ethical aspects. That is, ethics says that we should have it within a limitation one, and the other people also should be in a position to use it. But because of the greediness and competitiveness and commercial exploitation, the people are not in a position to think about legal aspects, ethical aspect. The people are, they don't have the morals, they don't have that's what you call, there's ethical values. So we need to go with the legal terms. So Biodiversity Act 2002 is being implemented in India, and before that one also there are several things. We'll discuss about those things. So the biodiversity is a variety or differences among the living organisms. So whatever we have covered, that just I'm not going to do that part. Levels of biodiversity: genetic biodiversity, species biodiversity, community biodiversity, or ecosystem biodiversity we have seen. And global biodiversity, there's the higher plants, number of identified species, and major taxonomic groups, and there is a number of identified species that is under threat. These are the things which were given. And see, it is the mammals and insects which are under threat. Actually, their number is insects number is very high, but they are under threat. And a few important facts about India. Already we discussed several points. Maybe sometimes it is a repeated one. Please have a patience. India is it's one of the mega biodiversity centers in the world, and it has two of 18 biodiversity. See, some scientists, they have made it into 25 biodiversities, and some of them they have divided into 18. And in fact, these two, there's Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats, they are top two. There's among top eight biodiversities. According to Ministry of Environment and Forest, a report in 1996, it is estimated that we have 45,000 plant species. In India, we got 45,000 plant species and 81,000 animal species, representing 7% of the world's flora and 6.5 fauna. There's plants are 6.5, sorry, 7%, and animals are 6.5%. And in 1999 survey, as per the 1999 survey, we got 49,219 plant species, and which contributes around 12.5%, and 81,251 animal species, which contributes 6.6%. And we got sacred grouse. What is sacred grouse? Oh, India, like Guhal. Some of the areas in country where the richness of biodiversity has been well preserved. And the third desert is Himalaya, are two regions they got unique biodiversity in India. There are 89 national parks and 504 wildlife sanctuaries in the country, and Chilika Lake being one of them. It is a natural one. This lake is also an important wetland area in India. And these are the 10 biodiversity areas what we discussed in the last class. So provision of why we should have a biodiversity act, actually. Why we should do a biodiversity act? The Biodiversity Act 2003 is a law meant to achieve three main objectives. One is conservation of biodiversity. Second, sustainable use of biological resource. I am telling sustainable. Sustainable is making something usage and at the same time make it available for the future generations. And equity in sharing of benefit from such use of resources. If some resources are being explored from your area, so there's a local resources benefits should be shared among the local people. This is the thing. So silent features of the act. So what these acts will do? It prohibits the transfer of Indian genetical material outside the country without specific approval of the Indian government. If genetical material is there, if it goes outside, it should be generally they don't permit. But you know, this International Rice Research Center, which is there in Manila, got lot of plant genetical material of Indian, and it is believed that some giant Indian scientists have smuggled these products to the international market, unfortunately. And that is one activity of this Biodiversity Act is concerned. Second, prohibition of anyone claiming intellectual property without there's a National Biodiversity Board. You cannot claim anything. See, we have used cordyceps in our lab for some purpose. So for this, you need to take a permission of Biodiversity Board. You need to take a Biodiversity Board. Regulation and collection of usage of biodiversity, like from nature, if you want to collect some plant or animal for some purpose, so how much it should be used, when it should be collected, that all the guidelines will be given by the National Biodiversity Authority. And measures of sharing benefits of biodiversity, including transfer of technology, monitoring. If I don't know whether you are aware or not, Guntur, in that Guntur area, BT cotton, Bacillus thuringiensis was Bacillus thuringiensis bacilli was isolated from that area, and this is being commercialized and it is being produced large value. So once a product is commercialized from one area, 1% of its benefit should be given to the area from where that biodiversity or that particular organism has been collected. This mandates by the Biodiversity Act. So whatever may be monetary returns, technology transfer, joint research and development, joint IPR ownership. See, they are the local people from where the organism has been collected, they got right. And they are entitled to get the financial benefit also. Okay, that is and that is maintained or controlled by the Biodiversity Board, this Biodiversity Act 2002. And measures to conserve and sustainability usage of resources, like this Biodiversity Act suggests that the biodiversity should be conserved and it should be made sustainable. And see, all genetical species and ecosystem level biodiversity should be protected. That is the mandate of Biodiversity Act. And provision of local communities to have a say, like see, if tribals are there or local people are there, then they don't need to take any permission from the biodiversity board for exploring the local products. So this is there is an exemption. This is exemption, and there is one more thing. There is exemption for research also. If an Indian, if you are getting a material from a local source, and if you are doing a research for research purpose only, you need not to take the permission. But if you are patenting it again, if you are patenting it, or if you are commercializing it, definitely you should take a patent permission. And protection of indigenous traditional knowledge through the appropriate laws and other means, such as the registration of such knowledge. Like somebody is doing medicine for jaundice, somebody is adding some leaf extracts into the eyes to prevent jaundice, or somebody is doing some herbal medicine for dissolving the stones in kidney. So such kind of things through Biodiversity Act, they are preserved. With appropriate laws, they are being preserved or conserved. Regulation of use of genetically modified organisms. See, Biodiversity Act prevents the much usage of genetically modified organisms, because genetically modified organisms, they are the alien species, they disturb the natural biodiversity. So this Biodiversity Act limits the usage of genetically modified organisms so that the biodiversity is not affected. Setting up of national and state and local biodiversity funds to be used support of conservation and this benefit of sharing. Setting up biodiversity management committees. See, this is the smallest unit. Biodiversity management committee is the smallest unit at village level, which actually they are supposed to see how many biodiversities how many species are there in the village, and which are conserved, which are yet to be conserved, and what are the beneficial one. If somebody wants to use something, the maintaining a register, everything will be done by the biodiversity management board. Actually, we have triple layer management system in biodiversity in India. One is national biodiversity system, national biodiversity board, state biodiversity board, and at village level we got biodiversity management committees. So the convention of biodiversity biological diversity board, there is a convention of biological diversity, CBD convention founded on the principle that local committees generate and are dependent on biodiversity and should continue to benefit from it. Local committees, they are entitled to use the biodiversity because they are the generators of biodiversity. And this CBD is signed in 1992 at UN conference. There is a Rio, which was held in Rio, UN Conference on Environmental and Development, UNICEF, and which was held in Rio, there's South Africa, and which has come in force from functioning 29th December 1992, and India has signed in it on 5th day of June 1992, and now almost 170 countries are there in that. Almost all countries are there in that one, and it got 3 goals: to promote the conservation of biodiversity, to have a sustainable usage, and fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from the utilization of the genetic sources. So this Biodiversity Act, you know that they will be having certain sections, and it will explain you definitions, it will give sections, it will give you the punishments who violates from it. So section 2B defines what is biological diversity actually. It is the means the variability among the living organisms from all sources and ecological complexes of which they are part, and includes diversity within the species or between the species and ecosystem. Biological diversity indicates the variability among the living organisms or within the species or in between the species or ecosystem. That is biological diversity. Second is biological resources. We are talking about biological resources. That means plants, animals, and microorganisms are part of them. If somebody cuts the twig, that is also a biological resource. And genetical material also, DNA, RNA, that is also biological resource. Okay, which actually excluding value-added products. Only the natural products are biological resources. If you modify it and if you add something, see, if wood is collected from the forest and it is made into some pot or bench or something, that is a value added product. This is not a natural resource, biological resource. The table is not a biological resource, but log what we collecting from the forest, that is a biological resource, and it is having a potential value, but does not include human genetical material. Human genetical material is not included under the biological resource, whereas except genetical material, the entire genetical material is included under the biological resources. And section 3G, fair and equitable sharing. What do you mean by fair and equitable sharing? Means of share. See, if anybody violates these rules, they will be getting a punishment. Means sharing of benefits as determined by the National Biodiversity Authority. That is going to decide under the section 21. And chapter 2, regulation of access of biological diversity. There is a section 3, there is a section 3.1, no person referred as subject shall be without provision approval of, see, you cannot take any material without the permission of National Biodiversity Authority for commercialization, for exploring, for biosurvey or bioutilization. You cannot take anything of your own, but a local person can use. If you are from the, see, you are in Hyderabad, you want to go and collect a gum from forest, a forest for commercial purpose, then you should take a permission from the Biodiversity Authority. You cannot go and take it like that, but local people, they can collect. Second, a person who shall be required to take approval from National Biodiversity Authority under section 1 are following, namely, a person who is not a citizen of India also should take a permission. A citizen of India who is non-resident, NRIs, also should take. Any a body corporate associated of organism, then like corporate people also, not incorporated in registration India, incorporated or anything corporate people also need to take a permission. Section 4, results of research not to be transferred to certain persons without prior approval of National Biodiversity Authority. See, you did a research, like Nallamalla forest, there is a spider. In fact, our zoology people, they have identified a new spider in that one, and you find that it's a spider for spines. They got a capacity to remove to reduce the arthritis. That is your research finding. That is your research finding, and for doing this research freely, you can collect the material from there, and you can do your research. But this knowledge, what you have attained, that cannot be transferred without the approval of National Biodiversity Authority. Without the National Biodiversity Authority, I told you 3 hierarchical method is there. The top is National Biodiversity Authority. You should take a National Biodiversity Authority if you want to transfer the research data that you got through the material collected from the biodiversity. And section 5 implicates section 3 and 4 are not applicable for a collaborative research. If you are doing a collaborative research in between 2 institutions, like information can be shared among the groups. And section 6 says application for intellectual property. Now, see, if you did some research and you found, you find that spider is having some financial value or medicinal value, then whenever you are going for an intellectual property right, first you should intimate to the Biodiversity Board. You cannot go for a patent filing by your own. At least before approval, you should have a Biodiversity Board approval. And section C, prior intimation to the state biodiversity, like you need to take the permission from the state biodiversities also in certain processes. No person who is a citizen of India or body corporate association. See, like if it is not National Biodiversity, you can take the state biodiversity also. So, Structure of Biodiversity Act 2002 suggests that 3 levels: National Biodiversity Authority, State Biodiversity Authority, and Biodiversity Management Committees. Biodiversity Management Committees. So in national biodiversity, you got a chairman, which is generally appointed by central government, and there are ex officio members. This we'll see in detail. There are members and non-officials. And ex officio members, they are of ministry members. There are different ministry members, like Ministry of Tribal Welfare, one person will be there. Ministry of Environment and Forest, one from each, and they will be ADG or DG level. And Ministry of Agriculture, one. Ministry of Biotechnology, one. Ministry of Ocean Development, one. Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperation, one. Indian Systems of Medicine and Homeopathy, one. Science and Technology, one. Scientific CSAR is going to be one. So, like from 9 ministries, we are having 10 members. Ministry of Environment and Forest, we are having 2. And non-officials, we are having, see, total, if you take the structure, uh, specialist and scientist having the special knowledge of or experience in that one will be taking, and this non-official members are 5, and their job is sustainable usage of, they should see that, see, these are actually non-officials are the people who are working in the field. These are the people who are working in the field. And they are diversity. These are the jobs. Slide is available. Are you able to see the slide? Pavan? Hello?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Another
sir.
10
Yes,
minutes.
sir. Now, okay.
Don't worry. So there are 11 members, and if they are not working in the interest of biodiversity, they can be removed. So this is a slide which is suggesting that one. And functions and powers of the National Biodiversity Authority. Under Section 18, it shall be the duty of National Biodiversity Authority to regulate activities referred in Section 3, 4, and 6 by regulations issued by guidelines. Like, see, I told you, conservation, sustainable usage, sharing, that all those things will be controlled by the National Biodiversity Act, by National Biodiversity Authority. And it advises the central government to make the amendments in the act and implement the act. And see, if somebody, there is one beautiful example. There's a neem plant. Neem plant was got patent. Even our haldi, turmeric got patent in Germany, basmati in US. So our people, this National Biodiversity Authority has opposed those grants, and we got the protection for it. And National Biodiversity Authority also, like under Rule 12, which mentions 12 powers, take necessary measures, including appointment of legal experts, sanction of grants in aid and grants to the State Biodiversity Board, prepare annual budget for authority, collect and compile and publish technical and statistical data. Like, see, this enumeration of animals, plants, and the conservation strategies. All those things are conducted by the National Biodiversity Authority. And chapter 6 of section 22, state government may notification in the official gazette, state government can establish a state biodiversity board. If there is no state biodiversity board, it can do. So with the help of National Biodiversity Board, they should constitute a state biodiversity board. And if it is there, union tertiary also can construct a local state, and it is not state, union tertiary biodiversity board kind of thing. Board shall be the body cooperate by the name of aforesaid, like whatever we have seen in the National Biodiversity Board, similar kind of structure it should have. And it should have a chairman, ex officio members, and experts. Here in case of state biodiversity boards. And section 23, the functions of the state biodiversity board shall be advise the state government, like whatever the nation is doing, similarly the state will be doing. Regulate the granting the approvals and perform other functions such as implementing of act. If somebody deviates, like, see, red sandalwood, if it is being smuggled, it is a state biodiversity board which is going to punish, not the National Biodiversity Board. And the most important thing is biodiversity management committees. This is a village level. Actually, each village should have, unfortunately, many of our villages, we don't have this biodiversity management committees. We will get a lot of fund for this management committees through the state as well as national biodiversity boards. Under section 41, every local body or village should have the biodiversity management committee within area of purpose of promoting the conservation and sustainable usage, documentation of biological diversity. So they will enumerate the biodiversity, and they will try to conserve the biodiversity. They will make sure that the sustainability of biodiversity, and they will be doing a sharing of benefit of biodiversity. So biodiversity conservation, already I discussed you, in situ, ex situ. In situ is a within place. Ex situ is taking away and keeping it the one place. These are the penalties and punishment if somebody violates section 3 and 4, 6, which are very important. Section 3, 4, 6. conservation of like if somebody is hampering the biodiversity or damaging the biodiversity, if they are extra over exploitations, if they are doing, there there is an imprisonment. You can that the biodiversity board can jail up to 5 years and a fine of extent of 10 lakhs rupees for damage caused more than 10 lakh rupees. This can be done. And section 55(2), section 7, or any other under the 24/2, there is a conservation of orders under section 7, imprisonment up to 3 years, fine extent of 5 lakhs. So these are the punishments under for the violation of biodiversity acts. This like major areas, if you can see, Himalayas, Chilka, Sundarbans, and Western Ghats and Thar deserts. These are the major areas what we have. This is about biodiversity, legal and ethical aspects.